In my world there is music and good vibes and laughter and lovers, adventure and friendship. We know who we are.
Hello and welcome everybody to Be the Wellness Podcast. Adam and Vanessa Lambert are back in the United States podcasting yet again.
Yes, we are. And we have been on quite a journey and are really excited to talk to you guys about our big adventure and all that's been going on in the last couple of weeks, and then all that's going to be coming up in the next couple months and year. And yeah, just so many things to be excited about.
In springtime, it's when all the stuff happens.
Yes, I'm really ready for that springtime weather to kick in, although I am seeing like little like inklings of sunshine coming through right now, which is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, we had about 20 minutes of gloom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really kind of set things
It
up.
set the tone for the day, though. But first, we should talk about how cool it is that we're getting some new reviews, 5-star reviews on iTunes.
Yes.
And we really appreciate this. And, I think it's funny because maybe you're out there and you've been listening for a while and you're like, oh, man, I want to leave a review, but then I feel bad because it took me so long to do it. Don't worry. My mom just finally left a review. So, it's all good.
Oh, you think people are not going to do it because they don't want to be obvious that they're late to the party?
Exactly. We love latecomers.
Yeah. Better late than never.
Yes, exactly. That's the point. So if you have yet to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and, a comment about your experience listening to the Be the Wellness podcast, we would love to see that review, and, it really makes a difference. And honestly, we've been asking for them for the last couple of weeks, and we're seeing them come in, and I think we just have to just keep asking for them. So thanks so much for those of you out there who've done it, including my mom, including Cocktails with Lee. We know we saw your review and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much for those of you who are stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, it's super cool. So speaking of reviews, this is kind of a segue, but I was reading through book reviews on Amazon for something. I can't even remember the book, Yeah. And it's this review, that review, that. And I typically what I'll do when I do that is I'll go to the 1 stars. I want to read
the bad.
What was the bad deal?
What's the problem?
And it's this one particular book I was reading had one bad star review. There was one bad star, one star review. There was 5,000 reviews, and only one of them was 1 star. I'm like, okay, what is this all about?
Yeah.
And flipped over, and basically it was like a review of Amazon in general. It was like, I tried to purchase my book 3 different times, and it kept saying, sorry, there's a problem with your connection. You know what I mean? It just went on and on and on about their overall shopping experience. And I was cracking up. And then there was a comment to their review, and the guy's like, dude, what are you doing? This has nothing to do with my book, I would appreciate it if you remove this.
So the point is, if your internet connection isn't that good and the podcast breaks up, don't leave us a 1-star review.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny.
That is funny. So we are back from Peru, which... it's always interesting when we come back from these events. It's like the snow globe has been shooken up, and we're kind of a little off, and there's all the re-entry sort of paradigm that happens. And it's definitely the case with this trip. It was definitely a paradigm shifter, if you will. And it's hard because, you try to put words to the experience and kind of what took place and how to verbalize it. And I really find with the Peru experience, it's actually quite difficult.
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
Yeah, it was, it was really powerful. And I was asking, some of the people on the train back from Aguas Calientes when we were going back into Cusco after, we'd finished our hike and finished Machu Picchu. I was asking folks for 3 words that kind of explain their trip or that summarizes their trip. And, the one word that kept coming up was transformation. And I really do think it's probably the best word to really summarize it. The second word was llama.
Llama.
I think the third one was colorful, but llama, sorry. But anyway, I just thought, it really is true. This was such a transformative, special connective, just very beautiful experience.
Yeah, I think some of it was that it was totally unexpected. Like we had this idea of what it was going to be like to go down there and do this like hard physical thing where we're going to go out and it's us versus the mountain and we're training for it and we're going to do all of this stuff to go, exercise our physicalness, which 100% happened.
Yeah,
like that,
absolutely.
But it was certainly not the like highlight of the trip. Like that wasn't the deal. It was just this incredibly unexpected like connectedness and just overwhelming feeling of being, God, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's the altitude or the lack of oxygen, like whatever it is. It's just different. You go and you see these things and you experience the mountains and the people and all of the various things going on, and it's not what you expected. Like even a little bit, or at least for me, and for us it's kind of interesting because typically with our retreats, it's us taking people to do things that we know and love and have experienced in life and are like, look, these are the things that we think make up the stuff of life, right?
Right.
Well, this was the first thing that we've ever done that we had not actually done at first.
Right, totally.
And it's, and so it was a little like overwhelming, like to go and you have this feeling, or for me anyway, to go and like, all right, well, we're the ones that are in charge and we're going to hike and we're going to da-da-da-da-da. And you go there and you're just like mind blown. You're like, oh my God, guys, I had no idea this was what we were going to be dealing with. Like this, I'm experiencing this too. You know what I mean? Like I'm not your Sherpa on this journey. Like I'm here with you, And that was, I think, that was unique for our experiences so far. I mean, not that we're disconnected from the group any other time.
Yeah.
But we were cast in this,
yes.
As opposed to like the coach-client relationship.
Yes.
We were all there as humans on a mountain.
I totally agree. I love that word that you said, cast into it, because that's honestly how it felt. It was like, whether or not we wanted to step in and embody like a more leadership role, it was not the destiny of this trip. The destiny of this trip, or like the way that it was like thrust upon us, was like, no, you are part of this. Like this is all of you together. This is not about like, obviously we do all the logistics and we do all the planning and there's all that kind of like upfront sort of loaded stuff. But then it was like, once the journey began, we were as participatory as any other person.
Right.
And it was like, there was no other option. There was no other way to be in it than that way. And it was like the way it was supposed to be. And it was really powerful for us. And I think it made me realize just how special it is to do the first trip on any given trip. Like there's a certain thing that unfolds that's new for everybody. And so like obviously each trip takes on its own tenor that it's supposed to, and everything is the way it's supposed to each time. But I did think like, wow, it's really special actually to have something be unfolding for us as a group and us be part of that unfolding, rather than knowing, oh, this is how we're going to feel and this is this day and this is that day. It was like, we have all the information, we have all the facts, we know on paper, we know, this is what you pack and this is how you prepare and this is the food, and like, all the details, but you don't know the experience because you haven't had it yet.
Right.
And so it's like, there was something just very, very special about, unveiling that experience as a group.
Yeah.
And so like, there's a big thank you to the groups, all the groups that step up to do things the first time with us, because we are admittedly like, okay, yeah, we haven't done this before. So there might be like a few hiccups. There might be a few things that come up that like, we just haven't done it yet, and in a perfect world, we'd be able to go do all these trips first and scout it out, but like, it's just not the reality.
Right.
And it's not like, even if we did it ourselves, wouldn't be the same as taking a group.
Yeah.
So like, there's something really beautiful about being that first group to like hop in and do that first experience together.
Yeah. And with this experience that we just had, I don't know. I mean, previously I would have, I always gear or kind of hedge myself more towards the sides of, okay, let's be more prepared. Let's do this. Let's figure out exactly what's up. So this is all, as controlled as possible. Just
Right.
because I feel like we owe that to our people. But
Sure,
after
yeah.
this one, I'm like, I don't know. There was something so spectacular about going through this together. And I
Yeah.
know, like, for you and I, you know, we're used to having things very much the way that we set them up to be.
Yes.
And there was something like challenging and refreshing about being in this and having to fundamentally adapt on the fly to our roles and what we were doing and how we were facilitating this experience. That was like, it was awesome. It was
Yes.
fresh and it was exciting, and you know, it was yeah, it was just great. So
Yeah.
anyway, we've been talking a lot about just like ethereal concepts about how cool this trip was, but let's talk about the actual
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah, definitely. And before we do that, though, I just want to mention one other thing, because it really rides the coattails of what you're saying. And you know, we have clients obviously who come to Costa Rica and come to different events, so there is a sense of knowing what our events are like. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of the conversations I had with one of our guests, Kevin, he was saying, you know, in Costa Rica, we do a nightly meditation before we wrap up the night. And we were talking about that. And so what we discovered through that conversation is that, you know, we all have a certain expectation of how the retreats start to form and how they start to be created. And so we go into these things. And he was like, yeah, I kind of thought maybe there would be a guided meditation. And he wasn't saying, oh, I'm disappointed. He was just mentioning that, like, oh, this is kind of how the sequence of this last one went. So I assumed like that would be a similar sequence. And so it was cool, because what we had the chance to discuss was that this is what's important to us, is not that we have the same sequence at all of our events.
Right.
It's that the event dictates the sequence.
Right.
And so there's a fine, delicate balance, because I think, I've heard this from other retreat leaders, you actually do yourself and the group a disservice having it too structured,
Yeah.
where the magic of it can't unfold.
Right.
You know, the beauty of how it just shapes itself can't unfold, because you're like, oh, I know you guys are having an awesome conversation, heartfelt conversation, but it's time to break it up and do meditation.
Yep.
Or like,
Right,
I know
right.
you guys are exhausted and all you want to do is go to bed, but you've got to stay up till
We're gonna
9
do some
o'clock
dynamic range of motion.
Yeah, exactly. So like, so you know,
Yeah.
you have, I think what I really discovered in Costa Rica was the magic of like leaving open space, you
Right.
know, not having everything like so planned out that there was no room for the magic to occur. And that's what I think really happened in Peru.
Yeah.
Is there was enough space.
There was enough space.
Yeah. And that was just like so apparent to me how important that
Yeah.
piece of it was.
Yeah, and especially in that environment, because it's the physical challenge was high enough.
Right.
You know, it was demanding enough that you were physically exhausted. Not to the point of, you know, misery, but
Right.
not a lot of monkey brain going on at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So there wasn't a lot to quiet.
Right.
Most everybody's just sat around in an incredibly, you know, in this just
Yes.
like zenned out situation, just kind of with a, you know, a smile on their face until dessert, and then they're like,
Later.
and it's over,
I'm
right?
done, yeah.
So a lot of what we do in practice, and I mean, and I think this is an important sort of overarching theme with what it is that we do in these retreats, which is to fundamentally take everything that we're practicing,
Right.
our nutrition, our exercise, our lifestyle skills, our mindfulness, all of these things, and just take them out into the real world,
Right.
into a vacation world, which is typically where people slip, right?
Yeah,
They're
right.
like, well, I'm going to be really good because I got to go on vacation. And when I
Right,
go on
right.
vacation, I'm going to throw everything out the window.
Sure.
Well, I mean, what we're really committed to doing is having these vacation experiences where we can really show how it doesn't have to end. Your healthy lifestyle, quote unquote,
Right.
doesn't have to stop
Right.
on a vacation.
Yeah.
I mean, and you don't even necessarily have to pick a vacation where it's all laid out for you.
Right.
But given the priorities and the right tools and the right kind of ideas around the whole thing, you can continue your life, you know,
Yes.
even while you're out doing something where 99% of what's available to you is out of your control.
Right.
Which is exactly what this situation was. Like, turns out Lodge 3, like nothing got there that didn't come on a horse. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? So it's like,
Totally,
hey, can I get a, nope.
Nope.
You know, you can't. You know, so this is what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, and I think, and then the flip side of that is that, and then the things that did go wrong, like we had a little miscommunication about what paleo means. And so, gluten-free became what paleo means, and we were served some gluten-free products. And, there became like this kind of thing that happened that transpired around just, being a different country and people not understanding things and, whatever. But the thing about it is, the other part of it is that we were also able to just like realize, hey, we're in a different situation, we're in a different country, and like adapt and go, okay, like if everything doesn't go perfectly, that's okay too. So like there was this really interesting balance that we were all striking between, like, oh, we can bring in these habits into our, vacation or our other world, juxtaposed to like, and then when shit doesn't work out, we just buffer it and roll through it.
Yeah, you make the best of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're just, it's such an important, there's just so many important lessons in all of that. There's so many important things in all of that. And, for me, just as a coach and kind of having a little bit more of that, spiritual look at it, or that sort of just, kind of, I don't know, just sort of zooming out and looking at the bigger picture. It was exactly what each of us needed. It was each lesson and each thing that we were confronted by, each thing that came up for us individually as a group was exactly what was meant for us to deal with and work through. And I honestly could see that each one of those things opened up a new place, a new experience, a new possibility, if you will, for us to kind of peep through and see about ourselves. Yeah. And that was really the thing for me that was so interesting. And then having to let go of control, because obviously like my super planner, Virgo, type A, like make sure everything's perfect personality also had to be part of that. Like, oh, okay, you have to, whatever gets thrown at us, like we're just going to have to work through it as a group and a team and buffer it and be okay and have this be the best experience in spite of anything that isn't perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And like another thing that's interesting about these groups, and we'll talk more about just like how tight our group became. I mean, we came in pretty tight and we left like as family, which was, I mean, it's so hard to just like look at these different retreats and be like, whoa, well, this was like blah, 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 or this was like whatever. But there was just something different about this. There just is. I don't know what it is. But
we
there's
say that every time.
I know, but there's just like something different about Peru, where we left there. But what I was getting at is like, there's this thing that we all have our expectation and our own version of paleo, or it's easy to talk about it with food, but this is like essentially everything in your life.
Yes.
You have your set
your way
parameters that you're like, no, I'm comfortable with this. I do these things. I don't do these things. These are the reasons why. When this happens, I freak out. When this happens, I don't freak out. And I'm happy when this happens. Right. So everybody just has these default settings.
Yes.
And when you're in that tight of a group with people who don't know your default settings necessarily, right? I mean, because we are, for as tight as we are, we're strangers.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
totally.
Like we don't know each other that well. I mean, even though a lot of us, I think pretty much everybody on this retreat had been to something, right? So there's a lot of that going on. But when you're confronted with something that would fall into that trigger of, oh, this would freak me out.
Yes.
And you see everybody else in the group who and respect their positions on things.
Right.
And then maybe some of them are freaking out.
Right.
You're seeing that there's other ways to react to similar situations, and people, it's a great exercise in self-reflection, I guess is what I'm getting at, because you can see yourself in the people around you.
Yes.
More so than you could, just people on a subway somewhere.
Yeah.
And you get to see how they're interacting with the space around them and how they're interacting with the same exact set of circumstances that you're in.
Yes.
Are they melting down? Are they freaking out? Are they crying for joy? Are they crying because they're crying? Like, you know what I mean? Is it terrible? Like what's going on? And, we saw all of that, right? Like we saw every single range of emotion come from one of the 17 of us, counting the guides.
Right.
in every one of these places that we showed up. You
Yeah.
walk over a ridge and you're presented with the most amazing lake that you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
You know, some people laughed, some people cried, some people just couldn't say anything.
Yeah.
Some people turned around and walked away. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, there it is. Now let's go back down, you know? So you saw everything, you know, and I think that part of the reason that this may have been such a sort of transformative, you know, for lack of a better term, experience is that kind of immediate self-reflection and ability to identify with the way that someone else is experiencing something is really, it really broadens your perspective.
Yeah.
Like way more so than sort of having to come to all of those realizations on your own, right?
No, I totally get it. It's like when you see, so for instance, you know, we had a moment where we all came up, well, like what you're talking about, and we had a really hard hike. It was our second day of hiking, and we went up to 14,000 feet, over 14,000 feet to this ridge overlooking Lake Humantai, and which is, if you guys have been following on my Instagram at all, it's just incredibly gorgeous, crystal blue, magical, sacred lake that we did a hike to. And you know, there's a couple, like both Meg and Tina, I think, burst into tears as soon as they saw it. And it was like, then they had this connection of like, you know, we had this moment, this thing moved us to tears. Like we did something hard. We did something that pushed our physical limitations. And then we were rewarded with this incredible, you know, experience and sight. And that, you know, that was our reaction. And it was like, they had this connection, you know, and then other people it's like you could see these different emotions in each other and you could connect almost like, oh, we had the laughing fit together.
Yeah. We had our moment at you know, the third rock in the forest or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it's like you got to kind of like, whereas maybe you have your normal set of emotions that you're either like the person who is happy or the person who gets grumpy or whatever. You have like a couple set default emotions you go to. This was, like you said, like it expanded out the possibility of what you could feel because all of a sudden you could see yourself reflected in all these different people and the way that they were experiencing it.
Yeah.
And the power of the group, I mean, we talked about this with the group, but like the power of the group is everything. You know, having that connection, knowing each other, you know, through online or, you know, having folks at various retreats throughout the years, having that connection as a group. And I mean, the retreat, the guides actually said it to us time and time again, like your group is amazing, like the energy and the connection is just so beautiful. And we had some shamans that performed a ceremony which was amazing that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more later, and they, you know, they said how happy they were with our group and how much positive energy our group brought. And it was like there was just this amazing power of being this unit, like that we were strength in numbers, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were there to do something.
Yeah, we
yeah.
were.
And we did.
And
you know,
we
we
did
experienced the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because I'm listening to you talk about this, and then obviously I listen to myself talk about it while I'm doing it. And I'm just like, God, we're not even coming close to like
Scratching the surface.
scratching the surface
I know.
of what goes on.
I know.
But we're trying.
Yes, we're trying.
We're trying really hard.
We're trying. So
Yeah.
whatever we're saying, just imagine it's 10 to 1,000 more times powerful than
Right.
how we're explaining it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, and we can kind of start talking about like the experience day to day. And you know, you land in Cusco, which is just this beautifully quaint, amazing city with, you know, all of these smooth cobblestone type streets and beautiful architecture and the people and the colors, the vibrancy of their clothing, you know, just the exuberance of their smiles and the energy of the city just sets the tone right away. And, you know, we were kind of nervous about the time of year because it's the end of their rainy season. So obviously, you know, the weather can still be a little cold, can be a little rainy. But what we found was that like the little bit of rain, the little bit of drizzle that we got was just incredible. It added to the energy of it. It added to the emotion of the experience. And so, we had a little bit of that rain in Cusco the first couple of days, and it was kind of like we're trying out our rain gear, and we're walking around, and we're like, everyone's just kind of in this anticipation of what's going to come. How is this event going to unfold? Am I prepared? Did I bring enough stuff? There's all this kind of nervous anticipation, but yet we're getting to, in these first acclimation days, do some of the most beautiful parts of the trip, which is explore Cusco and the Sacred Valley. And it was the first 2 days or 2 or 3 days, depending on how early you came, were like a whole nother trip in itself. It was a trip in and of itself, yeah. And that's kind of how this trip unfolded. It was like episodes. And so when we got home, I was like, have we been gone for lifetimes?
Yeah.
Because each little part of it was like a new vacation, a new experience, a new episode of the journey. And it was really interesting to just have this total different landscape and weather and temperature and environment. I mean, from the time we got to Cusco to the time we got to Machu Picchu, we'd been through 17 different ecosystems or something, something insane. So, Cusco in itself was just such a beautiful, lovely landing place and kind of jumping off point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was easy. It was, it's acclimation to the altitude is one thing, but it's also just kind of acclimation to South America.
Yes.
And everything's just a little different pace, and everything's kind of cruising and everybody's friendly, and it's like, hey, things aren't that big of a deal. And that, that kind of stuff can take a little bit of time to get into. And if you, and we see this with some of our other retreats when people are like, I'm at work on Monday and I'm at the retreat on Tuesday.
Right.
It can be a rough transition. It takes a day to kind of settle into, oh, okay, this is what's going on.
Right.
So you get that, that the acclimation is sort of multifaceted, at that period of time in Cusco, which is cool. And Cusco is a little over 11,000 feet, right? So, you're right out the gate, your lips are tingly, and, but the next morning when you wake up, you're like, oh, okay, this is okay.
Yeah,
definitely. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, and I was really impressed and proud. Our group, they all did such a good job of preparing themselves. Obviously we gave everyone the 12 weeks of training beforehand, and we had all of that, sort of, training protocol available. But in each of their own ways, they also did what they knew was right for them, whether that was coming in even earlier or making sure that they hiked in elevation. And, everyone kind of did their own version of preparation. And so when we landed, it wasn't long until everyone was pretty much good to go and ready to rock. So those 2 acclimation days were perfect. And then, we were really impressed that by the time they were up, amazingly enough, everyone was ready for the journey.
Yeah. Ready to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the overall trip is really well laid out with, a pretty short hike the first day.
Yes.
A little bit more challenging the second day, and then they just crush you on the third day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
totally.
but it's like, you work your way into it. So after we got done in Cusco, we all load up and we drive out to this farm, which is so one of the things about the trek that we went on is that their goal in life is to make this a sustainable business for the local farmers, for the villages along the trail, for they see this kind of as this whole thing of like, look, if we don't do something to preserve all of this and make it work right, we could really lose this magic piece of what we've got going.
Yes, totally.
And I think that they do a pretty dang good job of that. It's pretty all encompassing with all the different projects that they work on and all this. And one of the things they do is they have an organic farm where they employ the local farmers in this town called Molipata, that's where the food is produced for the entire trip.
Yes.
And so we stopped there and got to check out the operation, see what goes on, and we got tours of all of the various vegetables and the guinea pigs and
Right.
everybody that's getting grown to deal with this, and the avocados and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
palta.
yeah, palta fuerte, the big,
Yeah.
the big ones.
Which, P.S., it was avocado season.
Right.
So we were getting the most delicious,
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, the avocados were like none I've ever had.
Yeah,
to be
we
honest.
don't get those
No.
here.
No,
Like that's
it's a different breed.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like local. It's ripe in the right way.
Yeah, it's like the size of a football.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. But so we checked that out, and then we got to cruise in, and again in the same way, they're saying, hey, look, we're going to be bringing tourism fundamentally through this town. These are the things that the people are interested in. They're going to want good food, and they're going to want to buy local, goods.
Yeah.
Like they want all the alpaca that they can find, right?
Right.
And so people in the community are like, well, I can do that. I can do this. I can do that. And so they created these little co-ops that you get. I mean, I think anybody could roll in there and go to it, but this is just kind of where they direct us to.
Right.
So you go through and you get to learn about how they do everything. I mean, some of this stuff is so fascinating, the dyeing. Because if there's one thing, one thing Peru seems to just really have nailed, it's the textiles.
Oh my
I mean, the
gosh.
fabric down there, and I'm not a fabric person. Like, this isn't my thing. But it's amazing. You're like, these colors are ridiculous. And then to see how it's actually done with these little bugs that live on cactus and squished and mixed with some salt, you're like, what?
Yes.
Like, how did you figure this out?
Yeah. The dyeing process is amazing. And we were lucky to, have a little tour basically of how they create the colors. And so they would show, like, for instance, I bought a friend a scarf, and they showed me, oh, this scarf is gray and red, and the color came from this corn
and this onion
yeah, like, and you're just like, wow, this
and this rock.
Yeah,
you're like, what is that rock? Oh, these rocks only, you can only find these rocks some places. And you're like, Jesus.
And it's just so you would think that there would be like, a small array of colors or options, but I mean the colors and vibrancy and the the vast options are endless. It's crazy. Yeah.
It just goes on and on. It's fascinating. Like
yes.
It's one of those things, like you watch how it's made on the Discovery Channel or whatever, and and then the chemist mixes the blah 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 with the blah blah blah, and that makes purple. And you're like, the Peruvian version of that is, this little old lady goes and scrapes a bug off of a cactus and grinds it up in her palm, and then spits on it, and it's purple. And you're like,
she's dancing and singing.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, and so I mean, you can kind of see, like, as we're teeing up these stories, like, this is what the experience was. And, this is why we kept saying when we got to Machu Picchu, as incredible as Machu Picchu was, it was absolutely the journey and not the destination. Because every single one of these little moments, these little stories was literally a step in the path of our experience. And it just added into the richness of what this, what this journey meant to all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yep. 100%.
Yeah.
So we cruise out of Mollepata and start our first hike. So we drive out a ways, and the first day it's it's totally weather dependent. And this is the other thing about all of this. Like, right out the gate, like, you're planning your ideas about what each day is going to look like change, because you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're either going to drive to this point and then start hiking, or we're going to drive here and then start hiking, or we're and it's completely dependent on weather. It's there might be a mudslide, there might be a this, there might be a that. It's like at some point you're going to get out and start walking. And we're walking somewhere between this distance and this distance.
Right.
But it always works out. But it's like right out the gate, first day, we get some weather, and it's like all the things that you bought out of your pack. Put them on. You're going to need this. You're going to need this. You're going to need this. And you put it on and you do this. And I think we did like 1,200 vertical feet the first day, which was not terrible at all, but it was a really good test of like, okay, all right, we got to figure out your pace and kind of work this in. And
how much gear you're going to wear under your rain gear. Because it's like, even though it's raining, you actually get kind of hot. So you don't actually need, 47 layers of down underneath.
So your first day, you get it figured out. Like in the first hour, you're like, oh, okay, this is too much. Oh, this is not enough,
Yeah.
So we went up and up and up, and then picked up a old aqueduct, right? So an Inca aqueduct, and followed that thing around, which was pretty awesome. I mean,
it was really cool.
Just everywhere you go, once you're out in the Andes, like even 200 feet out of town, all of a sudden you start finding ruins of stuff, stone things of this, that, and the other thing, and stuff that was built there. I mean, it was just, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you think about going to Machu Picchu because, oh, there's this place with all these rocks. You're like, no, that's the one they uncovered.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's a very special one for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But they're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is really the part of it that you don't realize is just, you know, how entrenched the country is with all these remnants of this, you know, the ancients, if you will. And it's like, you know, it's like, I think I even said this on one of my Instagram stories. It's like the ancients are leading you along the way. You're following like the path of the ancients, and you really do feel that. You feel that immediately, like, wow, I can feel the essence and the presence of those who have gone before me on this journey, or, you know, been in this land and taken this route. And it's really like, you can feel it.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of them.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. It's like, how often do these? Oh yeah, a couple thousand guys, you know, every 2 days walk through here. You're just like, Jesus, all right, what were they doing? You know, they're going places.
Yeah, totally.
But so that first day on our little hike gets us up and through, you know, some of the stuff, and it's, you know, you don't really, with the exception of the flight in, you don't really get a view of the Andes. Like the first day is really your first opportunity to kind of get a feeling for just how vast these mountains are, and you really start to feel your place in the world, you know?
Totally. No.
And as we're going along this hike and walking along this aqueduct, you come to this point where, you know, the guides know, like they know where this is coming. And so everybody's ready, and you turn the corner, and it's the first time you get a full view of Salcantay, the mountain. Mm-hmm. And it's like,
wow.
What?
Yeah.
You know, everything is so dark, rich green around you, you know? I mean, that's the awesome thing about this time of year, is that it's so richly green. Like it's a color of green that you can't really even describe. It's so dark and just dense.
Right.
And then here's this bright white glacial mountain just boom, you know, sticking up in the middle of it, and you're like, what? Yeah, like who put that there? No,
it's so incredible. And, you know, I think, again, the vastness of the mountain ranges is unlike anything I've ever experienced. We don't have mountains like that in the U.S.
Yeah.
We have mountain ranges, and you can go to the Rockies, you can go to Tahoe, like you can see mountains, but the vastness and the density and the length and the distance and just the, you know, the sheer mass of these ranges, range on range on range, for as far as the eye can see, is so compelling to the eye that you're left awestruck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, the only other mountain that I've seen that really just sticks out like that is like the right time of year with the right sun and all of the things, is when Mount Shasta just pops.
Yes.
You know,
Mount Shasta is beautiful.
But it's all by itself.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like, you imagine that there's just a shark's mouth full of Mount Shasta teeth.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, we're in the Andes, you know?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And, you know, you hear about this stuff. You see the photos. You know, like, that you're going into this experience. But the gravity of being with the Andes it's incredible. You know, it's hard because we keep looking for words to explain it. But it's really something that's unexplainable. The power, the richness, and just, like, how small you feel against the backdrop of this wilderness is just so, you know, again, awe-inspiring.
Yeah, it's like the pictures don't do it justice, and neither do the words.
Exactly.
You're like, and you really can't capture much of it on video, so you're pretty much just gonna have to go.
Yes.
But so we wind up, you know, the first lodge that we get to is just phenomenal. I mean, all these places are spectacular, but we cruise into the first lodge, and we're basically right at the bottom. Or it feels like, anyway.
Yeah.
It turns out you're not.
You're actually still far.
You're still a long ways away from that mountain, but it seems like you're right at the base of the mountain. And, you know, we've got a big hot tub outside. And, you know, so everybody gets, you know, settled in. And we go out and jump in the hot tub as the sun's setting. And it's like, you know, sitting in this fantastic hot tub beneath this just, like, glacial white mountain.
Right.
With the creeks running, and there's just horses walking around, you know. And, there's I don't know.
No,
it
it's
just set the whole thing off.
awe-inspiring, and you just feel like, walking up to that first lodge, obviously I'd seen the photos of the lodge. You see all these things, they're quote-unquote luxury lodges, all of this stuff. There's no way the photos can capture how beautiful the scene, the location, just the vibe, the energy of these lodges are. There's just no way. And so when you come onto it, you're just like, I can't believe we get to stay here.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
This one's for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular.
It's really spectacular. And so, you stay 2 nights at that first lodge. So the very next day is the day that we did the hike to Lake Humantai. And, we got really lucky, and I don't know if this is something that happens regularly or not, but our guide said that, there happened to be Quechua shamans, and Quechua are the very original, people of the land.
The pre-Inca,
pre-Aztec, pre-everybody, pre-mestizo, pre-everything.
Yeah.
And so they're, it's a very revered culture. It's a very revered sort of their ways, their traditions, and their spirit, the way that they, do their ceremonies. Everything is very much held in a very high esteem and high regard. And so, they said these shaman would like to accompany us on our hike tomorrow to Lake Humantai and do a special ceremony. And, we're like, wow, that's amazing. Okay, cool. And so, we just had, it's funny because when somehow I ended up last into the lodge. And so one of the shaman came out, his name was Sebastian, and I didn't know who he was. And so I just, introduced myself and said hi and gave him a hug. And he's wearing one of those beautifully colored rainbow hats. And he just looks like this beacon of love.
Yeah.
And I just instantly was like, hi, you look pretty.
Yeah, what's going on with you?
What's happening with you?
Yeah.
Come to find out he's one of the shaman. And so somehow I just felt really connected with him, and he felt like just an instant friend. And so it was him and his brother Norman, and they accompanied us to the top of Lake Humantai. And so you're doing this arduous hike, and we go up to over 14,000 feet that day. And it was like the first day where you're pushing. Yeah. You're pushing the limits of what's possible or what you've discovered is possible for yourself. And, and they're playing their flutes, and they kind of explain that the flutes are not your traditional flutes that sound like something that
they each make their own.
They just make their own, and they make their own noises. And it's like if you were to listen to it, it may not make a lot of sense, but it's their version of connection to the gods, and that's how they speak. Their own way to the spirits. So they're playing their flutes. They're hiking in these little sandals that are basically amazing. That it's even on their feet. And we get to the top of the mountain, and again, that first look at the lake was just so overwhelming and so majestic that all of us felt like, I think it was the first moment where it's like, wow, we are on this journey.
We're here.
We are here. With this journey, what is about to unfold, what is unfolding is going to be a life-changing experience. Yeah. And I think you could feel that in that moment.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think showing up there at that lake could have been the entire trip.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And that was the thing about every single day.
Yes.
It was so your first day of actual trekking, you show up there, you're like, well, shit, now what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What's next? Because this is ridiculous. And everybody's like, yeah, this is just day one. Exactly. Let's wait till tomorrow,
Yeah, it was remarkable. You're right. Every day was like that. And we just kept saying, we haven't even got to Machu Picchu yet.
Yeah.
It was almost like, what?
Yeah. What is this Machu Picchu? Yeah, so we go up and just get to admire the lake and check this stuff out, and then these guys set up this ceremony for us, which is fundamentally it was like a blessing from the mountains, right? They were kind of like, all right, you guys, we welcome you to the mountains, and here's a blessing for your trip.
Yeah,
it was like a 45-minute deal. We all got to wear super cool hats, and they go through. And, we're no strangers to ceremony, Right. I mean, it's something that we deal with and we're interested in, and are like, okay, I have a lot of respect for how indigenous cultures do their thing. And it's one of the things that seems, and I really just haven't done enough research to know if my feeling on this is correct or not, but even though Peru, and specifically the Andes, has been through sort of multiple conquests, right? So like the Quechua survived, their culture survived the Incas, and then it, subsequently survived the Spanish. And here it is,
Right.
and it's like compared to the United States, where like our indigenous people here have not been able to maintain much of their culture at all. I mean, like certainly not in the way, or in my experience, to the degree that they've been able to maintain it in the Andes, specifically the Quechua culture.
Right.
Which is like, it just struck me as being really sad, because I was like, this is such a beautiful thing. I mean, these guys, look at what everything these guys are saying is like super on point. It's like, man, this place is amazing. Thank you for letting us be here. We're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
You take care of us. Like, just like really simple and basic stuff, but just so much reverence for the land. And you're like, who the hell would come in and want to stamp out this kind of like tradition?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, how is this threatening to your Christianity or whatever it is? You know what I mean? Like, these guys are just like, yeah, it's super cool. There's a mountain and some coca leaves. You know what I mean? And we're like, we love our coca leaves and we love the mountains. And like, I'll share these with you because you're going to need them.
Yeah.
And like, we'll go do our thing. So anyway, there's this level of reverence around it. And there's a thing that happens, at least with me, I feel like, and I think I'm probably not alone in this experience, in that when you're put into this situation with people like that, who have a tradition, they're into their thing, you're like, I get really conscientious of not wanting to like screw up their deal, like whatever they've got going on. Oh, this is a ceremony. We have to be very quiet and don't touch anything. Just, you know what I mean? Like, let them do their ceremony. And the thing that was just intensely refreshing about it was these guys didn't take it that seriously at all.
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, it's their thing.
Yes.
And it is 100% their thing, but they're so comfortable and confident in it that it's just part of life.
Right.
It's not something that if you fuck it
Be
up,
quiet,
you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like,
don't do something.
yeah. You're like, you just can't take this shit that seriously, and and it's not some like, oh, we only worship the eagle and the serpent and we do this. Like, no, man, they had little tricks, like animal crackers and stuff for like, this is a blessing to hope that you get a good car. And here's a blessing to hope that you have good shoes. And you're like, these are all, they're like, man, we really want you guys to like have a good car and good shoes and a good house would be good, so we're for all of it, you know? And you're like, it was so refreshingly like lighthearted that it was a really interesting perspective for me, because because we're so devoid of culture here in the States for the most part. I think there's a real tendency to latch on to things and take them way more seriously than you need to. And we're like, oh, well, the indigenous peoples of Peru would blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, dude, the indigenous peoples of Peru, or at least these ones, we're worshiping animal cracker cars and are not worshiping, but like offering these things to...
That they got at the shaman store.
That they got at the shaman store, which may have been a 7-Eleven, It's like I don't know. The whole thing was just amazing.
Yeah, it was refreshing. Well, no, you're right. I think because the only exposure we have to kind of ceremony or things, at least when we were younger, was probably like church or, all these things where it's like, be quiet, sit up straight, do this, do that.
Yeah.
And it's
God
like,
hates you.
Yeah. And this was just like... It was it was just light and just easy and just lovely. And, but at the same time was super powerful. And I felt like there was the energy and the emotion was raw,
for sure.
And it was like, I found myself definitely, crying tears for things I've mourned in the past and things I mourn in the future. And just, the great beauty and of life and the sadness and all of the things. It's like I was definitely overwhelmed with emotion on several occasions during the ceremony. So it was just this sweet balance of poignant love and connection and energy with like the animal crackers and like glitter and
Normand not really being able to say anybody's name, because part of the thing is they they're essentially saying a prayer for each of us, and so they want to include our name in it, like it's real. And so he's like, what's your name? He's like, you said, and he's like, And he'd like say it a couple times, you know. Erin. Okay. You know, he was like, all right, you're good.
Here's your animal cracker.
Here's your animal cracker.
Yeah. No, it was really beautiful, and like their contribution to our experience was unexpected and just completely magical and beautiful.
Yeah.
And you know, I think this is what I kind of got clued into at this point too, is that I think each one of these trips have their own frequency, their own vibration.
Yeah.
And you know, we're planning on you know, doing another Peru. We've got so much interest and we can't recommend it enough. So, you know, it looks like we're going to include that in our 2019 lineup. And we just, you know, it's just like, I could see in that moment that these trips are like, the trip is for the people there.
Right.
The people that are there make the trip. And like, it is meant to be for you the way it is for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I could feel in that moment. Like, this trip is the way it is for us because this group, this is what was here and necessary for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So we finish up our little ceremony.
Yes.
And we're below, like on one side of us is the lake with the mountain behind it and just this like ridiculous view. And on the other side are these big bald rock cliffs, like white granite cliffs. And it's where the Andean condor, I mean, we're in the vicinity of Andean condors, right?
Right.
And so we finish our ceremony and it's all very, you know, everybody's hugging each other and there's tears and there's all of this stuff. And it's like you look up and here's these condors just swooping in, and we're high enough that we can see the tops of their wings when they turn, and they've got these big white and black wings. I mean, these birds are just ridiculous.
They're like gigantic.
They're like dragons, you know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, it's a pterodactyl over there.
Yeah.
You know, you can see the shadow on the ground. It's like the shadow's 30 feet wide.
Right.
You know, because the birds have got like 10-foot wings or whatever. It was, again, it was crazy.
Just like, it was like, oh my gosh, the gods are smiling on us. Like, this is just so amazing. Yeah. And the condors just made it. It was like, end of ceremony. End ceremony.
You can walk back down the hill now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So we finished up that day, and then, that was our second night at the first lodge. And then we started our way to the second lodge. And this was the moneymaker day, and the day that, we hiked up over 15,000 feet, and it was no joke hike. It was a proper push.
Yeah. It was like real mountain shit too. Like we got up there and it was snowing.
Yeah.
So we had like the full sideways snow but not like, oh my God, this is dangerous and it's sticking to my face kind of snow, but like, it was just happening.
It was happening,
we were like, okay, we're almost 15,000 feet, and like the mist and the rock formations and the grass. I mean, just everything there is so foreign to us. Like the grasses and all the bushes and trees and stuff are like things you've just never even seen before.
Yeah.
Like literally. So.
Well, yeah, literally. Yeah. Well, and it was crazy because we kept saying, I mean, we could be in Ireland or Scotland or something right now. There was like these big grassy fields with these boulders.
Game of Thrones.
It was like Game of Thrones. And it was like this heavy mist. And honestly, again, with the weather, it was like, oh, is this going to be a problem if it's raining or whatever? Honestly, it was magic.
Like, thank God it was not, the sun wasn't out.
Exactly. Yeah. Doing that kind of hard work in the cool weather was perfect. And I honestly wouldn't have wanted it any warmer because you're working hard, and you're generating a lot of body heat. And, I think we walked, I don't remember what the amount of steps. Like I was looking at our steps every day.
It was like 43,000 steps or something.
Well, I think it was 24,000 that day.
Maybe it was, yeah.
But it was like, you're working hard and long and, for a huge amount of time. So, but anyway, you get to the 15,115 50-foot mark, and it's you're at the pass, and right about then it's like cold enough and high enough that it starts snowing, and it just felt to me, it felt right. It was like, and an avalanche happens.
Yes.
We're at the top of the mountain, like the snow starts, and all of a sudden this huge avalanche on one of the mountain tops next to us, and it went on and on and on, and we could see it, and it was super loud, and we were just like, what the hell? Like,
I mean, it was clearly far enough away to be totally safe.
Yeah.
But it was so loud, because if you know how when you're in dense fog like that, it does something to the acoustics,
Right.
right? So I mean, it just was like boom,
Yeah.
crack,
And it was so
like,
foggy.
on and
It
on
was
and
far
on.
enough away and so foggy that like you would think you wouldn't be able to see it, but there was like this one like blank spot of fog where
Yeah.
it was like the avalanche was happening. We could see it coming down. It was like, what is happening? Like, I'm
Yeah.
freaking out, man. Like, life is really crazy right now because this experience is really intense and powerful and amazing.
Right.
And I just did one of the most physically demanding things I've ever done. And I'm
Yeah.
like just being greeted with this natural experience at the top. That's crazy.
Right, and there's only about like 30% the oxygen density of like,
Yes.
what's normal or whatever it is. I think
Exactly.
we're like it's almost a full atmosphere, so we were up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that was quite a thing.
It was quite a thing.
And I'll
yeah.
tell you, like that somewhere around 14,700 or whatever. Like I'm pretty sure. I don't know why, but I feel like that was the number for me, where it started to actually get pretty hard.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm having to, dig deep because I'm running around filming and like go over here and try to do this and try, just kind of doing all this. And I was like, okay, time to focus on me.
On just walking.
I just need to walk up this
Yeah.
hill now, And so you get around the corner, and I think I was like the fourth one up or something,
Mm-hmm.
and like. It was drudgery, and then I could hear you guys screaming and yelling at the top, and I was like, "Oh, it's close. Okay, fine."
Yeah.
And then just that internal dialogue of like, "Oh, this is going to go on forever," and
Right.
then like realizing it was an
Yeah.
interesting thing. At that, I'm like, "Oh, actually,
It's almost
we're there.
over."
It's almost there."
Yeah. And getting to the top of that thing was just like, it was, I for the first time in my life was like, oh, this is why people want to hike Everest or
Right.
any of the great, treks that people want to do, because there's something just absolutely overwhelmingly beautiful and tremendous about accomplishing something like
Yeah.
that. And, the thing is, we're all different ages, all different fitness levels. I mean, this wasn't like, this wasn't 13 other Adam and me. Like, this is people who have different backgrounds, different ages, different, not everyone's athletes,
Right.
not everyone's coming into this, but everyone tackled that in their own way, made it to the top. And it was so incredibly beautiful to see what became possible for them in that moment of accomplishment.
Yeah.
And Tina, one of our clients, Tina, who's come to Costa Rica, actually came to one of our first Primal Blueprint. She became a hiker. Like, she became someone who can hike, who can
Right.
do this, she became a new person to herself
Right.
as a result of this experience. And like, to see her transform, and I think, Tina wasn't the only one. Like,
Right. There was
but-
definitely some of that.
yeah, there was like all of a sudden people became someone new to themselves that they didn't know was someone they
Right.
could be. They didn't know a whole world was possible for them. And that was that in that moment they were like, wow, I am something that I never thought I could be.
Yeah.
And it was freaking unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yep. And this is just something that we talk about it a lot, especially when we're on other people's podcasts. And I'm like, well, what is it you guys do? And when we talk about this, about using the language of strength and conditioning and the physicalness of challenges to teach people how to overcome adversity and gain that physical confidence that is required to just go do stuff in life.
Right.
And we had two perfect examples of that, Tina, you were just talking about, and Meg, who both of whom crush it in the world. They're savvy and powerful businesswomen, and they
Yes.
they are doing it.
Yes.
It's like they're forces to be reckoned with in that piece of their world, but have never really experienced that physicalness.
Yes.
Didn't play a ton of sports, just didn't have that background,
Yeah.
and for both of them in this circumstance to come through this and say, oh my God,
Yeah.
I
did that.
I can do anything.
Yeah.
Like if I set my pace and I prepare properly and I take my time and I grind it out, I can do this.
I can do this.
What else can I do? And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You just, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
is that's everything. For
It's
us.
everything.
That's
why we do this.
it's why we do it.
Yes.
It's everything. And I remember when we were walking back down off the pass, headed into Lodge 3, you and I were talking about, I don't know what, like we were just talking about business stuff or whatever. And it was like, were just like, whatever we do, we have to do whatever it takes to continue doing this.
Yes.
Like this is the most important thing that we're doing.
Yeah. This is the most important work. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like there's just no words for the feeling of doing that. And it's like, we didn't do it. Yeah. They're the ones that did it. You know what I mean? But like to be in the presence of that sort of breakthrough and realization of how powerful you are as a person it's inspiring.
It's everything. Yeah. And it's more inspiring than us doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, oh, that's cool. I did it too. But like you did it. And that is freaking awesome because like that is what we want to create, is like a catalyst for possibility for people in the world, you know? And obviously these adventures have given us a way to do that. And you can see a distinct correlation between a moment like that and now who you are returning to your world. And, you know, Tina and Kevin, again, we've been quietly pushing our 2019 offerings to the wait list, and we're going to be doing New Zealand. In New Zealand, we have a couple of pretty hard hikes on there. And, you know, Tina was like, wow, I can do this. I'm a hiker. Like I can go to New Zealand now. I could be this person. Right. And so it's just so crazy. It's so amazing to see that and be part of that. And that, I think, and, you know, and that's like a very obvious moment, but there's so many other moments. You know, our clients, Cindy and Glenn, who everyone knows in Unveil Your Wellness and in the feed, they were talking about how they had been wanting to, you know, downsize their house and, you know, live more minimalistically and, you know, change their lives. And this Peru trip, they said, was actually the spark to do all that. They sold their house, they sold all their belongings, and, you know, Peru was like the anchor for them to make that commitment to changing their life and moving forward in a different way. And, you know, and Glenn, after that ceremony, he just said, you know, I want to do work that gives back to the planet, and I don't want to have to take jobs or be part of things that I don't, you know, that I don't believe in. And, you know, this is part of this experience is just reminding me and reinforcing that that's like who I want to be in the world. And so like, it may not be just that hike. It may be just this commitment to doing something like this and that ceremony on the mountaintop with the shamans that just reaffirms to you who you are already inside and how to keep becoming that in the world. Yeah.
Bottom line is, dude, there's really cool people that come on these trips.
I know. You guys are so awesome.
It's like
it's so awesome.
Yeah, it's really beyond words. The level of gratitude that Vanessa and I have for our people, the people who show up and do this. It's like it's just. Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, you know, it's like as you're wrapping up the retreat, you're like telling everyone you love them. You're like, I love you. I'll see you soon. And it's like, love you guys. Yeah. I do. I love you. I like you're my person, you know, I care about you. And this is like, I care about what's happening in your life and who you're becoming and what's possible for you. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously that day was extremely powerful for all of us. And I think coming out of that, again, it was like, we haven't even got to Machu Picchu. Like, holy cow. This is crazy. And we haven't even done the thing that we're here to do. So, you know, from there, the crazy thing is that so you show up at the next lodge, Lodge 2, which was my favorite. And it was just, I mean, you are just hugged in the center of the Andes, in the center of all these amazing snow-capped peaks. And it's just this lodge is unconceivably amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't get anything there. No. Right? So
and you can't get to it.
You can't get to it other than by horse or on foot. Like the trail that we took that's the way in. Yes. You know? Yes. And so to get the stuff there to build that thing, I mean, it was just remarkable. So they ended up there's a whole story around it, but they ended up hiring Quechua. Yeah. A couple hundred or a couple thousand, couple hundred. Anyway, it was a lot of these guys to literally hike all the stuff in. Yeah. And they would, because they love their soccer. Like these guys are like, they play soccer. Like that's their jam. They would porter all the stuff in and then run back to town. Yeah. So that they could play their soccer game on Sunday. And they would, so they'd get up at like 4 a.m. and run back to town and go to town, get their load of lumber, come back, and then run back to town so they could play soccer.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, and we were like having these like life-changing spiritual experiences just trying to walk over this thing. And they're like, okay, 3 times today and then a soccer game, no problem, you know?
Exactly.
It's bizarre.
Like, who are the athletes here?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. So, yeah, being there, honestly, I wish I could have stayed there for a month. It was just that amazing, just being in the middle of that space and just like the natural environment there, just how clean the air feels, the energy. It's breathtaking. And then the fact that you have internet, though, it's like
dude, there's better internet in Peru than there is in the States. Like, there's better internet on that trail than we have at our house.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's
You're just
super
like,
bizarre.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And I can post on Instagram. Okay.
Yeah.
But no, so anyway, we left that lodge, and then the crazy thing is that you go straight into, the tropical forest.
Right.
Like you start just
you go through the cloud forest and then into the rainforest.
And into the rainforest, yeah. And so like the temperature, the scenery, the plants, everything changes dramatically. And all of a sudden you're walking through it's like you went to another country.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you are in a completely different area. And so I think this is why this trek in particular was so incredible, is that you were like in different zones and climates, and you felt like you were just literally going through different experiences of the world each day.
Yeah. Well, because they say that. You're like, yeah, you're going to go through 19 different microclimates or whatever the number is. And you're like, okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah. You're like, no, actually, you're going to go from Hawaii to Iceland to, you know what I mean? You're to Ireland. You're going to spend a little bit of time wherever they filmed Game of Thrones.
Right.
And then, you're going to come back into Colombia, and then you're going to work your way down into the Amazon. And you're like, what?
That's it. Yeah.
That's basically the deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna drink some coffee, and you're gonna see, eat some passion
fruit. You're gonna have
fruit.
fish on the side of a mountain, which doesn't make sense, but
Yeah. No, there's just so many crazy things, and we got to we kind of came into this area where we were finally gonna see the very first views of Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
And this is again like one of the reasons, like, I didn't want to have too many things scheduled, okay, this is our guided meditation time, this is our this time. Well, we happened to come into this spot where the guide said, sometimes we get lucky and sometimes we don't. Sometimes the area will let us see the first views of the mountain. Sometimes it's too cloudy and we can't see it. And so we were kind of hanging out, hoping that maybe the clouds would clear. And Kevin, we'd been talking about the guided meditation. So I said, hey, maybe we should do a guided meditation right now while we wait for the clouds to clear and see if we can see these first views of Machu Picchu. And so we sat down and I started doing a meditation. And I actually, within the meditation, asked permission to see Machu Picchu, asked the weather, the area, the just like
crystals,
the general energy of
Right.
Peru, if we could have a moment to see Machu Picchu. And then all of a sudden we could feel the sun coming through and all of our skin was starting to warm. And I was like, okay, guys, and let's wrap this up because I think it's happening.
Yeah,
and
it's
we
happening.
walked over to the edge. This little patch of fog cleared.
Yeah.
We saw the first views of Machu Picchu, and then literally there's a group that came up behind us and like it closed.
Yeah.
And it was like just for our group.
Just for us. And it's the mountains are so steep. So we were a canyon away, right? So we were like on one ridge looking across a big canyon to Machu Picchu.
Right.
And everything's so steep that when the fog lifts, it goes straight up.
Yeah.
So like, if you're used to fog on the coastline, the fog pushes in horizontally and then it kind of pulls out. Mm-hmm. Here, it's like
up and down.
Vertical.
Yeah.
So it's literally like a curtain raising.
Yes.
You sit and you watch it and everything goes up and up and up and you're like, oh my God, there it is. And then it comes back down. You're like, what the hell? Yeah. It's so Avatar-y, like the whole, because there's like peaks and stuff that are hidden in the clouds. I mean, I've just never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
Like the terrain and everything.
Totally. No, it was really incredible. So that was kind of like, again, it was just like, okay, this was the meditation. This was the one. Like this was, we only had one, but it was the one.
That was the one. It was the one that lifted the clouds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when we cruised and we went through, and this is the thing, is like, calling this a trip to Machu Picchu is like so underselling what goes on.
I know.
Because you're like, what'd you guys do? Oh, we went to Machu Picchu. And I've talked to people about it and they're like, oh yeah, I went to Machu Picchu once. I'm like, How did you go? They're like,
How'd you
well,
get there?
we were in Aguascalientes and we took the bus up. And I'm like, right, okay. So there's a whole other way of getting there. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's like this journey that takes you through all of these worlds, and you, it's just so
a
bizarre.
spirit quest.
You're just out there going through your thing, and then there's like all of a sudden you're in coffee plantations,
Right.
And you're like, oh, well, this is shade-grown coffee.
Yes.
You're like looking around, you're like, oh yeah, sure enough, they plant avocado trees, and then they plant the coffee under the avocado trees to get this shade-grown coffee.
You're like, this is what that means.
This is what that means. And then they're like, oh yeah, and this is this, here's this bucket with this hand wheel thing and water, and yeah, this is wet processing for the coffee, and there's these 4 little families here that produce all the coffee. And you're like, no shit. I mean, here we are in the middle of this. And so we got to cruise into this little coffee plantation, and the lady roasted beans for us like in a clay pot over a fire.
Yep.
And then ground them and made coffee. It was like the freshest situation you could have.
Yes.
I mean, they're like, here's the beans from her plant. She roasts them in this little clay thing and then grinds them up and then made coffee. And it was ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
Like,
the coffee there is so amazing in general. I mean, that particular moment was like, forget about it. But the coffee in Peru in general is just,
real good.
for coffee lovers, like, it is incredible.
Yeah, it's real good. So, it's just so bizarre because, like, you think about, like, especially in the United States, agriculture is so refined and systematized that, you look out at, I mean, even our vineyards, you look at our vineyards and they're very
perfect,
straight lines. Everything's exactly this, and then you go and you're walking along an Inca trail, like an actual piece of the original Inca trail, and you're like, what are these red berries? Oh, this is coffee. And you look around and you're like, well, yeah, we're in the middle of a coffee plantation. It just looks like jungle,
Yeah,
it's a trip.
Yeah, totally. No, it was really cool. That was actually really special, having that little moment. This is the thing is, like, again, it was the journey. Like, it was every little piece of it. It was no one thing. It was not getting to Machu Picchu. It was literally every step, every moment, every conversation, every coffee bean, every plant, every flower.
Every little place you stop to, like, have a snack, and the local animals come out, and they're
Every
like,
dog.
because there's dogs, and then the one place is chickens. There's all these super aggressive chickens that are like after your snacks. You know what I mean? And man, people think chickens are cute, but those, like, I put chickens in a similar category as cats. Like, if they were big enough, they would kill you. You know what I mean? They would just eat you. They're creepy dinosaur birds. Like, yeah. Anyway.
Aw, poor chickens.
I know, but you saw those were like some gangster looking chickens at that one spot.
But there was the one they were all picking on. That was so sad.
Yeah,
it was so nice.
It's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it's just all of these little moments just added up to an unbelievable. And then we hiked down into where we caught the train to Aguascalientes, and honestly, Aguascalientes was just so darling and such a cute little quaint village, little trekking village. And I could see why people would just want to spend, a week there or whatever.
Yeah.
We stayed at a really beautiful hotel. The property, the grounds was just incredible. It's like every piece of the journey was just so well done and so well put together and beautiful. And it was just such a special, every location was so special, and it did not end, that did not end with the final destination. In fact, our final hotel was so pretty and amazing.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah.
And then from there, you bus it up to Machu Picchu, and it's like finally you arrive. But it was a little, like being back in civilization, like being on the train and at the train station and around all the people, it was a little bit weird.
It was really weird.
We'd just been 6 days with the 15 of us spread out across a trail in like vast wilderness. And,
yes.
I mean, and
we were a little feral.
Yeah, we got a little feral. It was a little bit weird to just have that many people around and the hustle and bustle and all the stuff going on, and you're like, whoa.
What? Yeah, totally.
And you get thrust into people who haven't been through what you just went through.
Yes.
So like we were talking about in the beginning, this idea of like the quiet mind, mindfulness thing that happens, like that just becomes how you are. And then all of a sudden you're like dealing with people who are not that way, and you're like, whoa, everybody settle down.
Lines for the
settle
bathrooms
down.
and getting tickets. And it's like, it was really a stark contrast. But, this is why I think that the Salcantay Trail is so special. Is, you can do the Inca Trail, you can do the Laras. There's like so many different trails you can do. But the Salcantay Trail is like we have it solo most of the time. I
Right.
mean, we see very few people the whole time.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, and it's one of the reasons that I chose this as our route and chose this whole scenario is, oftentimes on the Inca Trail, you'll just be bumper to bumper with people
Right.
the whole time. So getting to Machu Picchu may not seem as quite a departure for people who've
Yeah.
come in that way because
Right.
they've been kind of bumper to bumper
the group. Yeah.
with people all the way through. But for us, I mean, we had a lot of the parts of the trails were private trails that were
Yeah.
like literally just for us, or
Right.
the company maintains because there's a landslide here, they built another trail or
Yeah.
whatever. So it was really interesting to kind of come back into normalcy and be like,
Yeah.
what are all these people doing here?
Yeah, and because I mean, even though that there was 17 of us, including the guides, most of the time you're spread out single file or maybe 2 by 2 on the trail, and for a number of days you're really only with 1 or 2 other people.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like at any given time.
Yes.
So yeah, it was interesting.
It was interesting.
It was
Yeah,
like I reverted back to my old, like, where I grew up in the wilderness self really quickly. I was
Yeah.
like, oh man,
people.
there's so many of
The
them.
muggles.
What do they want? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. And I think all of us had to kind of grapple with that for a minute. We were like, oh this is weird because this is the destination, but the destination feels really awkward. But, obviously Machu Picchu in and of itself is amazing.
Yeah.
And we all got a chance to kind of pick our routes and what we wanted to
Right.
do. Aaron and Adam and I went and did Huayna Picchu, which was like another big peak that overlooks down on the mountain. And then, some of the groups split up and just to tour on their own. And everyone kind of got to do what they wanted. And Machu Picchu totally showed up for us. Like
Yeah.
the sun came out, the clouds lifted, which, you could go there and end up having like a really socked in day where the clouds
Right.
stay and it's like you don't get the great views, but we ended up having great views and great pictures and all the
All of it
things.
worked out, yeah.
So, and this was the thing that stuck with me. And maybe we can start to just kind of wrap it up because, we've landed in Machu Picchu and it happened. But one of the things that stuck with me is the guide said in the very beginning, like, your group must have good karma because the weather is showing up for you. And he said it very seriously. Like, he was like, no, really, like, this is, like, we take the karma of the group very seriously when it comes to how the weather performs. And I was like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
That's what's up because the group
We bring the sunshine, man, everywhere
Yeah.
we go. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just thought that was really interesting and special, and I did feel like the karmic connection between this group was very special, and it was just meant to be. It's like
Yeah.
the only way I can say it.
Right. Yeah, it all just worked.
So having that extra day in Aguas Calientes was so nice because everyone had a chance to decompress and kind of just be for a moment, and so just having that extra space and time and just being at the hotel was very welcomed, sort of, bookend to the trip. And I think that really made a difference for everyone to have the extra day. So I was so glad we had that time. And a few of us went back up to Machu Picchu. A few stayed in the hotel. Everyone kind of got to choose their own adventure again. And I think that was really cool because that's what I really felt about this group is that everyone felt really empowered to do what was right for them.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't this thing of like, we have to do this because this is the group. It's like, there was definitely a group and we all had to be part of the group that was happening, but there was still that freedom to explore what your trip was, what you wanted your trip to be for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once we wrapped up in Aguas Calientes, it was the crazy train ride on the way back.
That was the best train ride I've ever been on.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, first of all, it was freaking beautiful. Like, you're literally going along the river through through all the peaks, like basically through everything that you hike through.
Yeah.
I mean, not exactly, but like
Right, around
similar.
it,
Yeah,
sort of.
similar kind of, aesthetic and similar kind of mountaintops and all the snowy peaks. And you're seeing all these beautiful visions and you're right alongside the river. And it was just so pretty. And then they have this whole entertainment thing and everyone was just in such a good mood It was just like the vibes were on point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it too is like, who rides a train?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, we're not trainers around
It's so
here.
cool.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of
well,
cool.
I
just to
do
hop on
once
a
in a
train.
while because I take it down to see you in San Diego. But like, and it's so fun. I love
Yeah.
the train. Yeah.
Okay. Turns out
I'm a trainer.
trains are fun.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so that's cool. And then we just circle this whole thing back to the place that we started, you know,
Yeah.
and everybody lands back in our little hotel that seems like home once you get back to it, you know, 10 days later or whatever.
Yes.
And we all go our separate ways,
Yeah.
which is weird.
Which was really weird.
Yeah.
It was actually really weird. And, you know, we kind of did our little wrap up like conversation in the hotel before we all separated on that last night. And I think that's really when I think the gravity of not being able to put into words the experience kind of hit us all. Because it was like we were
Right.
trying to say how much we loved it, how amazing it was. And it was just like you could feel this sense of like, there's no words.
Right.
There's no words.
Yeah. And we opened the whole thing. Jesus, Kirby, what the fuck are you doing over there? You coming back? So we opened the whole thing on the first night that everybody was together with like almost like opening of a ceremony. And we didn't really even know, but it was just, you know, we always do some kind of a welcome thing. And you were like, hey, you know, and I just want to encourage everybody to, you know, be present and mindful and set an intention and just kind of like all of this stuff. And then at the end, it was like, no, we have to close this. Like this was a ceremony.
Yes.
It was a really long ceremony, you know, but it just didn't feel right to just leave. It was like, look, there's something needs to be said about this, and we need to kind of land this plane and like talk about it, like acknowledge that this was something, you know? Yeah. So we did that.
Yeah. And it was something.
And it was something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. that was Peru.
That was Peru in a nutshell.
Yeah. So it was pretty powerful. And again, you know, we've had so much interest, and honestly, I think because of the experience and how powerful it was, we've decided to do it again in 2019. So I'm working out the exact dates right now, but it looks like it's going to be the end of March, the same time, really. We're going to do the same time. And then for those of you out there who didn't cling on to this earlier, we're actually doing New Zealand as well. And so I've got dates for that. We haven't pushed any of this stuff public. So if you want to make sure that you have a spot on any of these trips, make sure to reach out to me either at info@bethewellness.com, or you can go into our Instagram and follow the link in our bio to the retreat survey and get your name on the list there. So I would do that if you are serious about joining one of these adventures in 2019. And then we'll have Costa Rica again later in 2019. And those are our 3 set trips for 2019 so far. So if any of those are for sure what you want to do, then make sure you reach out to us, because we already are filling up on both of them. So yeah, that's how it goes.
It's crazy these days. Got to be on that list.
You got to be on the list. Yeah, totally.
Which is cool.
So if you are wanting to join one of these amazing experiences and you can't wait until 2019,
yes,
then come join us at BFest.
Yep.
If there's anything that this trip really made me realize is how powerful the group is and how important it is to share these experiences. And I'm telling you, man, BFest is going to be freaking cool.
Yeah.
So if that community part of it is important to you, and that just like celebrating of life and connecting with what it is that we're doing here in this life, this sharing of nature and food and music and love and friendship and just pure joy, I'm like, this is your event. What are you waiting for?
Bam. And if you guys happen to be in Austin, Texas for Paleo FX,
yes,
we'll be there too.
We will be there.
Yeah, we're going to give a little talk on something.
Yes. Actually,
no, we're going to talk a lot about this. Like this
yes.
is so like kind of like what I was saying in the beginning. I mean, what we're after however many years in business, we're really starting to solidify what it is that we do.
Yes.
And, because we do a lot of things, right?
Right.
We are health coaches, which is a broad spectrum. We do a lot of things. But what I think we really do is help people integrate all of the knowledge that they've accumulated into their actual lives.
Yes.
And we do it while we're on vacation.
And we do it in epic experiences.
Epic experiences,
Yes.
and just like, and things that push you,
Yeah.
So,
and for our Peruvians out there, for any of our people out there, our goal is really to get people doing something like this once a year, at least once a year, because I think sometimes we get in our mind like, oh, I did that trip. And then maybe you wait 3 years, or you wait 4 years, or you wait whatever. And we really, we used to be like that too. We used to think like, oh, those big trips or those big vacations are only for this certain amount of time. And obviously we know that they cost money. We know that there's like a financial ask there. But what we really are trying to encourage people to do is make this part of your budget. Make these adventures, make these experiences part of your life budget, because these things will pay back in dividends over the, extra nights of dinners out, or fancy clothes, or bottles of wine, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, make these things a priority over some of the other things that maybe you spend your money on, because you need less things and you'll enjoy more experiences.
Yeah. It's like the idea of hedonic calendaring, right? It's
exactly.
like the flow genome stuff. It's like you have to put stuff down on the calendar, or else it's always going to get swept under. This is just like our daily practices, just like meditation, just like, everything.
Yes.
Everything that you're doing for yourself as self-care, or a life expanding experience, those things will almost 100% get overshadowed and out prioritized by the emergency of the day.
Yes.
If they're not scheduled, planned for, and just locked down.
Yes.
And so some people take that down to like the hours in the day. Every 20 minutes I'm going to get up and stretch my eyes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like this, if you don't do these things, they're not going to get done.
They're not going to get done. And what's going to happen is you're going to say, oh, when this happens, then this.
Yeah.
When I have these things taken care of, then that. Well, you're always going to have those things in the way if you're the kind of person who lets things be in the way. and I don't like it's not like a trite, rude, like bitchy asshole. I'm not trying. It's just true. Like you have to at some point decide what kind of person you are. Are you the kind of person that makes this a priority in your life? And if it's not interesting to you, or you're not like into it, then that's great. I'm not trying to say that people who really don't want to do this kind of stuff should make it a priority.
People who don't like this suck.
No, and then that's like, then you're clear on that, and that's cool.
Yeah, whatever. Right.
Then that's totally cool. But if you're listening to these things and year on year, you're like, oh man, someday, the someday will always be someday if you're a someday kind of person. So you just have to step in at some point to becoming the kind of person who makes these part of their story. And so I encourage people out there who are listening that are like, oh man, one of these days I want to do this. You just have to take that step, that leap at some point to become the kind of person who does these things.
Word.
And B-Fest is a great first
and
step.
B-Fest is a great jumping off point.
It is. It really is.
It's coming right up, right around the corner, easy
Yes.
access.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening to this. I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, we know that it's hard to put words to these kind of experiences, but we really, really wanted to share with you because it was so profound. We didn't want to just say, oh, Peru was cool. We wanted to try. We wanted to give it our best attempt to really go through what the experience was like.
Yeah.
And also for folks out there who are considering it, you have a really good idea now of what it is and what it's going to look like. And I'm sure your adventure will be different than this adventure.
Right.
Because your adventure will be your adventure. But at least it gives you some context for the logistics and kind of like the feel of it. And if it's, something that you want to tackle.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Which I think you do.
Which you do.
You do.
Trust me, you do.
Yeah. All right, folks.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap.
Yes. We'll see you soon.
Love you. See you soon.
Bye.
And just a friendly reminder, folks, if you have not left us a 5-star review on iTunes, you should go do it right now.
You should.
It's a perfect opportunity. The podcast is over. You can just scroll down on your device with your thumb and to the little spot that says leave a review. Drop in 5 stars, leave us a note, say something cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we will send you mad love.
It's true. You'll get it immediately.
Immediately. You'll feel a warm sensation coming over your body.
For instant access to a warmth sensation and mad love from Venice, leave us a 5-star review.
The end.
The end.